Session is going to be a panel discussion featuring quite an interesting topic. A topic very much is spoken about. Now, if you are interested in the topic of cultivating a culture of balance, strategies for well-being at work, we request you to remain seated in the room. And track one, the hall next door, I think they've already started, will feature the session on Beyond Differences, fostering diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in the workplace. If you feel like you would benefit from that, we request you to join that room as well. Now, track two on panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, cultivating a culture of balance, strategies for well-being at work. We'd like to take a minute to introduce you to our panelists. Our panelist joining us on stage is publicly known as the Mind Manager, known for her name on Instagram, licensed clinical psychologist from Sri Lanka Medical Council with a specialization in cognitive behavioral therapy and marriage couple family therapy from the USA. She's also a member of the APA, which is the American Psychological Association, and founder of the mental health blog www.themindmanager.lk. Can we please put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, to our panelists, Chanel de Almeida. We also have our panelists, the General Manager, CEO of Lanka Financial Services Bureau, a certified risk management professional of the Risk Management Society of USA, a certified information systems auditor, and a chartered marketer holding an MBA from the Postgraduate Institute of Management affiliated to the University of Sri Jawaharlal. He has held management and non-management positions in multinational and local organizations in different industries in Sri Lanka. Can we put our hands together, everybody, for our panelists, Mihindu Rajaratna. And we're also joined by our panelist, who is the General Manager and Group Chief Human Resources Officer of Janashakti Group, a financial conglomerate in Sri Lanka. And in this role, she oversees HR operations for Janashakti Limited, First Capital Holdings PLC, Orient Finance PLC, as well as looking at the Janashakti Business Services Private Limited, Beckett Capital, and Janashakti Corporate Services Limited. And she brings with her over 24 years of extensive experience in human resources industry in Sri Lanka. Her expertise encompasses talent management, employee relations, industrial dispute resolution, mentoring and coaching, strategic HR planning, and learning and development. That's our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Can we give a round of applause to Ms. Vasanthi Stephen? And finally, we'd like to welcome to the stage as well as Chief People Officer for Fortitude. She's a dynamic human capital management expert with over 18 years of experience dedicated to transforming employee alignment strategies for global organizations across various industries, including technology and apparel. As an EXCO member of the Association of Human Resource Management, she collaborates with influential organizations such as SHRM, Deloitte, Kincentric, Udemy, SAP, and Oracle. Her efforts involve conducting enlightening training sessions that empower the HR community in Sri Lanka and around the world. Could you please put your hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Oshana Dias. And to moderate our session, ladies and gentlemen, we invite a lady on stage who counts over 25 years as being working with leaders, teams, and organizations in supporting their development journeys through transitions and transformation. At the heart of her work as a coach, enabling leaders and teams to enter into the process of personal and collective transformations, whereby they develop the skills and resilience to navigate crisis and uncertainty, to build on value-led life, to take mindful actions and decisions that elevate not only their life, but also the lives of those around them. Our moderator, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mihirini D'Souza, renowned leadership coach. Can I have my panelists and our moderator to take on the stage now, ladies and gentlemen, as I invite Dr. Mihirini to take over with the opening presentation, followed by the panel discussion.
Good morning, everyone. It's such an honor to be here, to be invited to this panel, and about a topic that is very close to my heart, and such a pleasure to share this space with you. I know that most, if not all of you, are actively working on organizations and the well-being of your employees. Either you're right in the thick of it or even in the fringes. Because I'm also confident that at some point, all of you would have experienced feeling off balance in your own well-being. And for some of us, this may be a little bit more on a day-to-day basis as the different competing demands of life take over and we have to navigate these challenges, not to mention the other external forces like political and economic challenges that we are all kind of waiting for some of these things to happen. They also have an effect on us. As you will hear from our panelists, as much of as well-being is an organizational endeavor, it is also very personal. And that's where I would really like to start with them. Therefore, wanting to address well-being issues in larger systems, in our organizations and teams, is very relevant. Because if we are to really address well-being for all, we must share and understand each of our stories. That is the only way that we can create, while we create larger programs, that we also make sure that we address everyone. So I thought I'll also start with a little bit of a personal anecdote and then make a very small presentation about well-being. So I'd like to share a small personal anecdote. When I was about 30, I went through a therapeutic exercise where I did a visualization of my death. I'd like to share those stories of what exactly I visualized because it is quite fresh to me even up to this date. But what was more important was, so I was very practical. I looked at my genetics, my lifestyle, and I thought I might live till about 80. But it was the epiphany for me at that time, at the age of 30, was that this body, this host has to carry me for the next 50 years. Now, mind you, that was 22 years ago, so I'm 52 today. And I joined a gym for the first time in my life a week after that visualization exercise. That was how profound that exercise was for me, to knowing that if I have to be well and fit to carry my body and to up until 80, I better be looking after it. And since then, I have continued to engage in some form of exercise. And of course, it's not optimal. There are lots more things I could be doing. But I think what I've also realized is that during different life stages, what fitness and what being physically well has also changed. As a 52-year-old perimenopausal woman, I'm now kind of more accepting of my shape and more focused on getting stronger, because that apparently research shows is more conducive to quality of life. So as you can see that these kinds of things have definitely impacted my own personal well-being. And of course, physical wellness is not the only thing. There are so many aspects which I'd like to share with you, just a few slides on a presentation. Like even addressing mental and emotional well-being has also changed over the years. Late in my 30s, I went through a divorce, so that meant that I had to learn how to navigate that. Recently, about 4 years ago, my husband passed away, navigating grief journeys. Now as an elder daughter, looking after or attending to parents who are also aging and their health issues, whilst also trying to learn and grow in my own business and my own learning. So this is all, things are changing. But for me, well-being has also meant being aware of what I need and being able to rise to those challenges, developing the skills and practices to be able to attend to those needs. So as a leadership coach, one of the things that I am very aware is that when I'm working with my clients, my mood, my mental and emotional health is really important, because working one-to-one or whether in a team coaching or in a group coaching, this is intimate work. It's not really like this where you're seated here and talking. You're actually very much in a receiving space. You're creating safe spaces. So if I'm not feeling okay, it could quite likely interfere with the process. And I intuitively knew that I could also transfer what I'm feeling to the other person. And recently, and this is where if I could have, and I realized recently that there is research that shows that stress is contagious. And there's neuroscience to prove it. So what we've known intuitively, that when we walk into a room or you're around people who are stressed, that you are likely to also feel stressed is real. And you know why? So most of us know about our stress response, which is that, our bodies, it's a natural occurrence that when you are faced with imminent danger, so 10,000 years ago, it could have been a saber-toothed cat, which was about to jump out of the bushes. You would have a fight, flight, freeze response, and that's your your stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your body, and that allows you to respond to that imminent danger. Our bodies haven't changed that much. So it might not be the saber-toothed cat jumping at you, it could be your boss. Or it could be a car that, cuts you off at a traffic light. And that your body is still responding, very similar to that. And this stress response creates all these hormones to come out. Now, you can't fight your boss, you can't flee from the roof, maybe you could, or being frozen doesn't show emotional agility. So you have to kind of figure out how you're going to deal with this. But your body has already responded. And what happens is that cortisol actually leaks out of your skin a few centimeters. So if you hang around people who are highly stressed, or if you're highly stressed, it's quite likely that people around you could also absorb it. We sometimes say some conversations, not just the content, you might sometimes say, the person has drained us. So there is actually now physiological reasons or there is science that is showing that this is real. So of course this is a biological survival response. Because if we are able to spot, and if we also start feeling somebody else's response, you've seen deers in the jungle. Moment one deer twitches, all the other deers get startled, because it is a way to know that there's imminent danger. So we are biologically, to a large degree, still wired in this way. And there are pros and cons. One is, if we are able to feel what the other person is feeling, we could also build empathy. And that's useful, because I might know by looking at somebody or feeding off that how do I respond to this person given how that other person is feeling. The downside of all this is that we're also absorbing. So there is research that shows that if, especially alpha leaders, who kind of, we still have a little bit of the hierarchy going like in the animal kingdom. If the alpha leader, so could be the CEO of the organization, is highly stressed or stressful, you might find, and you can think about your own organizations, your own teams, which teams are more stressed and how is their boss? So because this actually, is contagious. So, which is one of the reasons that, why the kind of work we do is also really, a lot of the work that organizations do is trying to influence, impact employees to look after their own well-being and to create the right environments for that. So there are lots of different ways to do this. This model is kind of an amalgamation of different models because I'm trying to capture different areas. So I talked earlier about the physical and mental and emotional wellness, but there's social connection. Do we feel supported? Do we have community? It is a huge area. Do go and look at the Harvard longitudinal study on happiness. It's over now 75 years. The project started with, they took 2 groups of young men or boys from 2 communities, and I also want to add that they didn't do research on women those days. Men were the standard for all things human, but they have changed that, I think, in the last 10 years, and they have included women in the research. And the idea was to do, and it is an amazing research because it's that long, the piece of research, that where they look at what are the ingredients for success? And what they do find is that what success means is also different. That those people, regardless of which community they came from, so one community was slightly more privileged and the other less privileged in the Boston area, and that those men who had community had better physical health, better mental health, and they said they were happier, regardless of where they came from. And one of the ingredients was community. So it's a huge part in your well-being. Then growth, learning, creativity. Are you growing in your career, in your learning, or the things that you want to achieve? And creativity also, when you are engaged in different creative acts, it tricks your brain into thinking that you must be relaxed, that you must be stress-free. So, all these different therapeutic practices of journaling, singing, dancing, yoga, art therapy, and reading also apparently counts in this, makes your brain, it kind of soothes your parasympathetic nervous system. And it thinks that you're not stressed, and it does change your stress level. So, stress is only one factor of well-being, but it just shows that these are big parts of it. And of course, financial health is a big part of it. It's linked to our emotional and mental health. And environmental health can be many things. It can be ergonomics. And in the earlier session, we talked about trust. Do you have an environment of trust and safety? And the other one is that people who feel that they are living a purposeful life, or there's a larger purpose, they have meaning in what they do, and that also, in some of the other sessions that they've been sharing, that also contributes towards your well-being. So these are all different areas of, I have heaps of statistics, but I saw lots of really interesting statistics shared earlier, so I'm not going to do that, because I'd much rather, and I think you might too, hear from our panelists. So this is just to give a context that all of these panelists here are actively involved in creating well-being in their organizations. But I thought that I'd like to actually start with them, and now I'll take my questions out, to ask them what their well-being practices are. So maybe, Oshana, let me start with the conversation with you. Sure. In one of our chats, you shared that as your understanding and practice for your own well-being progress, that what balance means also changed for you. So could you share a little bit about and what that looks like in practice?
Sure. Thanks, Mihirini. For me, balance, and it's a word we hear a lot, along with work-life balance. But with time and probably age again, I realized that for me, this mindset of balance sometimes also causes a bit of stress. Because we are in a ever-changing world. If you just take Sri Lanka from 2020 to we had COVID, we got over COVID, we had an economic crisis. So many things changed. And we went to working from home overnight. And then for me, it was more integration. Actually, it was our MD CEO who kind of, introduced that concept. And I thought about it because it's nearly impossible to kind of have these really strict boundaries in an ever-changing world. And we say that, you need to be agile. And I think integrating life and work helps there. So if I was to kind of, take a step back, I think you first need to kind of look at what balance looks like and go into integration. It's a lot about your mindset as well. And also being self-aware, and I would say adaptability. And that's kind of what helped me to go from like balance to integration. And I must say, it's not that I'm never stressed, but it's less stress because I know, okay, it's kind of that, I work for a global IT organization, so if I need to get on a call in the night, I need to get on the call in the night. I can't say 5 p.m. my work is done. In terms of my personal well-being practices, so in terms of physical well-being, I work out. One of my coaches, Andrea, introduced me to journaling, which was really helpful. I also do yoga because I think it kind of, calms you down. You kind of, look at your breath work. I also believe in social wellness. I think that's also needed apart from, it's not your work colleagues, your corporate colleagues, maybe your school friends, I think are your strongest ties. I also do different things like to cook without recipe and just see what happens, right? Not that I poison anyone, but it's interesting, right? Because you can kind of mix things. And earlier this year, I think when I reconnected with Mihirini, I was in a workshop and I picked this card, The Great Art of Mixing Drinks. Not because I'm an alcoholic, but I picked that card because it also kind of integrates with integration, because I think it's a mix and it's kind of how you do that mix and you also learn to enjoy it. Thanks.
Thank you, Shan. And I think you described for you integration like a painting, that where everything kind of blends well together, whereas balance has boundaries, which is important to start with. But when you start integrating, that it looks more like a painting, is how I remember you describing it to me. So Vasanthi, you shared that looking after your wellness has become a really important facet of your life, especially in the recent past. And there's a lot that you juggle personally and professional. Could you share a little bit about this? And in this context, what does well-being and balance mean to you?
Okay, thank you, Mihirini, and thank you for having me. At the moment, juggling a lot of balls. I have 2 sons. One is doing A-levels, one is at grade 5. And I'm working for a financial conglomerate. I think when a woman, I think to any gender to that matter, when you climb the ladder or in whichever the position you are in, people expect you to be strong. So that's what I had to do to a great extent of my life. But there came a situation where I was just feeling that I'm losing the grip. That's when I lost my best friend about 4 years back. And then thereafter, my dad passed away, and then my mom passed away, and then I nearly lost my life when I was trying to swim in the sea. So there were a sequence of events that I had to face, and I was like trying to be strong. I cry behind the doors, and I come and smile and face the world. So there came a point, it was very difficult for me to take it anymore. And then I started looking, how am I gonna now balance? How am I gonna look after my well-being? Because I felt that I'm really coming to a breaking point and hitting a wall. Then only I started looking out within to see how I can help myself. Few things that I've noticed is self-care is the thing, where we sometimes take it for granted. When we have so many things to juggle with, we don't really look after ourselves much, because we think looking after others is a priority and a must. Even in a flight, if there's an emergency situation, they tell to put your oxygen mask first, even before putting it to your child. So you need to rescue yourself before you go and rescue the rest of the community, family, anyone to that matter. So I started my spiritual journey to some extent, which I wasn't at all involved at some point. And then, yes, bit of everything, the yoga, the Reiki and all that, look within myself to help myself to come out of the situation, which helped to a great extent. And balance is not really a 50-50 balance with regard to home and office. You can't do that because the priorities are different. Sometimes you have to spend 80% of your time handling some office task and maybe give about less time for your personal life, vice versa. So balance for me is prioritizing and looking at where I could spend my energy. I really don't spend my energy on things that is really not relevant to me or doesn't interest me or where I have no control of. I preserve my energy to juggle the important balls in my life. That's one of the success factors that I have come this far with everything that I was handling. The other thing is, if you are in a toxic relationship or if you are in a toxic environment, I think you need to come out of it because it really drags you down. Now, like you said, stress, you basically catch it if you see. So like that, I think you need to see how you can uproot yourself in toxic environments and preserve your energy for the things that really matters. The other thing, healthy boundaries help me a lot, where I started saying no to certain things which I wasn't. I try to please everyone in handling a lot of things where I thought it's no more possible. And then creating healthy boundaries also helped. So
thank you very much, Vasanthi, and for sharing that very personal journey with us. I think a lot of us could also relate. We've all had different sorts of losses, and while we think of organizational well-being, there is a lot of life also is going on, and that's one of the concerns for organizations, how to respond when individuals are going through different life stages. Mihindu, so when we were having a chat, you said that your well-being journey, looking after your physical and mental well-being is a big part of who you are. Could you share a little bit about that and what it looks like in practice?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the invitation and great place to be here. So first of all, I'd like to give a background. I think life is a very simple thing. I think we all have complicated it too much. That's not fundamental to anything. Life is very simple thing. Life is simple when you look at your priorities. So in a case of the question comes from the moderator. I prioritize my life in terms of my well-being purely because of the fact that I realize that I'm married, I'm having kids, I'm having a family. I live not only for me, I live for them as well. So all of you all need to think that way, because if one broke down in the family, that affects the entire family. And family is the smallest organization that can have a very big impact on our society. Moreover, we must realize as we born, we have one soul and we have many roles to play. It's the roles, it's not the soul. It's the roles that create conflict and stress. So if you prioritize, what are the roles that you need to play? What are my priority roles? And what are not my priorities? You will immediately remove stress. So for me, exercise was very important because in school time I did about 5 sports, and my parents, particularly my father, argued that I'm going to fail GC ordinary level. purely because I engage in sports. First, same year, first 3 months or 4 months, I took a challenge. I did all completed in that year, and I passed all level. So it's a matter of priorities. Little sharing, at that time I thought I will first do the sports. I took Vesak holidays, and I studied and I updated myself and went through the O level. So then I realized that, this physical well-being is very important, because sound body creates a sound mind, and sound mind creates a sound body. If your mind is not sound, everything starts from there. Because the biggest issue today of us is that we are not looking at ourselves very critically. If you look at ourselves very critically, and very important in terms of your physical fitness, which leads to the fitness of the mind, then it leads to a lesser complex, simple life. One other thing that we try to do is, from the day we born, we try to impress others. We don't like to impress ourselves. I don't know what is wrong with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Hindu. That, I think, is a big part of, and we carry a lot, especially in our part of the culture, shame and all of these things, because we are often living for other people's expectations of who we should be. So maybe that's a good segue into you, Chanel, because as a mental health practitioner, someone whose work is also in the field of wellness, mental wellness, what does balance and wellness mean to you, and what does that look like?
Yes, thanks, Marini, for having me, and great to be here. I think in terms of what everyone said today, it's all related to core values for me. Core values is basically the essence of what matters to us. And the problem is, we are always in conflict, right? Because there are two aspects to the self according to psychology theory, right? That is, you have your authentic self, which is who you really are as a person, right? And who you really want to be, versus the cultural self, which is what the world wants us to be, right? And we're always in conflict with these two things. Do I be me, or do I be what my parents want me to be? Do I be what my society, my culture wants me to be? And it's a tough one. But I think, as a cognitive behavioral therapist, what I've noticed is we need to change the narrative, right? I'm always rethinking my narrative. And a narrative is basically the story you have about yourself and the world, right? Very often we have all kinds of influences that, and nowadays we have social media influences. You have to be very careful about where you get your influence from, because you're constantly fed information about what is right, what is profitable, what is not, what is sexy, what is not sexy. How do we decide all these things, right? There's so much information. And looking at my clientele, which is, I would say, 60% Gen Z, right? Falling into alpha, right? Gen alpha. It's all about figuring out who I am. And most young people are really struggling to know who they are. And that's because the previous generations, we kind of had an idea, right? Maybe you had religion, right? Maybe you knew that you really wanted to be a wife and a mother, right? Wonderful things, right? But the thing is, now we're not sure. The younger generation has no idea, because their attention is getting hijacked by all kinds of things, right? So it's very important that we figure out what our narrative is to navigate the authentic self. If you don't decide who you are and who you want to be, guess what? The world will tell you, right? So we've got to be accountable for that. And for me, I've found that core values are profound. You need to really define what really matters. We live in a very capitalistic society. Money is God, whether you like it or not, right? We need to really think if that's a God worth worshipping as individuals. We need to really think, okay, why do we need money? Money is not just a means at the end of, to the end of it, right? It's because it gets you stuff. It gets you freedom. It gets you identity. It makes you feel self-worth, right? And most people struggle with self-worth. Nowadays, your net worth is directly correlated with your self-worth, right? We really need to question that narrative. Does that really mean just because your net worth is higher that you're a better person than everyone else? Or is it how you conduct yourself? Is it the kind of husband and wife you are? The kind of mother you are? There are various labels you really need to define. So I try to define my core values and my narrative, and that really helps me be a better practitioner and entrepreneur and whatever else it is.
Thank you very much, Chanel, for that. I think that your authentic self and the cultural self, and that comes to our also in organization, because that's also where a struggle might start happening, because you might think you are a particular kind of person, and in organizations you have to navigate different roles, different cultural values. So going into organizations, and Oshana, you're somebody who, works in a global organization with global employees, which means that they might have varying degrees of needs. So Fortitude has around 600 employees spread across the globe. So how do you, so I was thinking I'll ask more first a tactical question and then, strategic one. How do you keep a pulse on how the Fortitude team are doing across so many geographies? And what is the impact on the organization? And if you find out that the organization or across your different companies globally are not doing well, what is the impact for the organization, for the business?
So I'll answer the tactical one first. So to see how we're doing in terms of well-being, it's a very quantitative study, and it's not because I'm up here, but it's GPTW. So we do it every year. We do it every year at a particular time. It's February. Whatever happens, it happens in February. So we know that year on year how, and it's a 100% survey. We do it privately. It's with GPTW, and we do introduce the customized question on well-being. So, and we do roll it out to now. At last year, the 8 countries that we are represented in as Fortitude. We also do a pulse check internally. So that's an internally developed survey, which deals with the different aspects of well-being. So that kind of happens in about September. So twice a year there is quantitative data. But I also believe that, to look at how you're doing, your biggest measurement is also retention. If people are staying, that's for a lot of reasons, and well-being today is probably one too. In terms of how do we kind of navigate it globally, yes, we do have sometimes, countries that don't get as high score as Sri Lanka. And whilst we're presented in so many countries, it's only in Sri Lanka that we actually have a physical office where people come in to work 3 days a week. Otherwise, it's like, WeWorks or Regis, and people come in when they need to, but mostly it's work from home. So it's kind of to understand, it's in Sri Lanka, when we did the survey, and we did it just after we told everyone, you need to spend at least 3 days in office. So the feedback came across, but in the rest of the countries, it's like we actually want an office to go to office. So you kind of, you need to deal with it and you need to balance with it. But overall, our purpose at Fortitude is to deliver digital solutions that matter. And who delivers these solutions? People. So for us, people need to be well. So we do have a lot of programs that we do to ensure that people are well. So it starts from like we've got everyone to do a mental wellness certification, and it's through our Fortitude Academy. It's online. So we had about a 2-month period. We didn't want to stress employees too much. take it during that time. We have Essence of Wellness circles where we get psychologists to come and talk. We do train our managers. We have financial wellness sessions. We're just opening a small gym at work because now people need to come to work as well. So we do work on the physical wellness side as well. So it's kind of a holistic approach, and something that we did differently is we have one person who's dedicated for wellness in the team. It's a part-time role, but it's not with BAU, because wherever it sits, whether it's HR, you just get caught up in so many other things. So we have somebody who's passionate about it, who works on it part-time.
So that's also what you're also saying, that you all are really taking this pillar quite seriously now. And I guess post-COVID, that has had a lot of impact as well. So Mihindu, you also shared about your approach to instill and inculcate and integrate wellness as part of the culture at Lanka Financial Services. I almost felt that when we were chatting that rather than a wellness policy, that there seemed to be a lot of different practices that you have. That you become part of a response to different wellness gaps that you come across. Could you say a little bit more and share maybe one or two examples?
This is about the organization.
Yes, from the organization's perspective.
First of all, we are SWIFT Bureau in Sri Lanka. SWIFT stands for Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. And in terms of the business, it is critical and sensitive business. I am on 24/7 duty, my phone cannot be off. And we connect all the banks, including central bank, to the world. So if our network is down for 800 milliseconds, the whole economy can be brought down. Whether there's economy or not, that's not a question. But that's the impact that we can make. So, see, every employee, including myself, is a very critical role that we play. So when you play a critical role, we need to look after the well-being of employee. I personally know a lot of models that I studied. The models gives us the direction how to guide ourselves. Instead, most professionals follow the models and try to get imprisoned, and they are imprisoned in models. So when it comes to actual situations of working life, they cannot relate it to application. So what we did was, the first alarm bell that was rang in East attack, right? Then we thought, if this continue to do so, if the terrorist attack do so, how do we continue these services to the bank? Because we are handling the most critical network, we need to be connected. Terrorist attack is in Sri Lanka, but the whole world financial hubs are connected. So I spoke to my team and I told, because we have a very small team, we don't have the typical hierarchical organization that most of the Sri Lankan organizations has, because we build on core process. We only have two core process. One is SWIFT operations, the other one is administration and finance. So we looked at how best, okay, if it is curfew, still we need to continue, how best we can work. Then we exercise something called remote working, and we define rules, and we were ready. When COVID comes, we just have to switch on. To tell you, most of the banks were not ready, we were ready. So in the same time, I realized that when the COVID was first reported, I remember when I was wearing the first mask and walk outside, all of my friends started laughing, right? And I bought some mask when it was at 20 rupees, they bought the mask when it was at 200 rupees. See, the idea of the organizational leader or the organization make people to think forward. So the well-being of the employees is very important. I told them these are practices, this is the world practices, this is what the World Health Organization, so we immediately brought into the policy implementation. I told the board, and this is what the policy implementation we cannot do, immediately switch all the board meetings to online, and we have a routine practice, we immediately install the roster. See, these some of the practices. And during COVID and immediately after COVID, we knew that the people are stressed, when the, curfew is lifted, they'll have to go outside and buy. So we had a special flexible grant. Okay, you come to office, you do your private work and then come back to office. Because one need to know that the world has become a burnout society. It was burnout society, but it started burning out very rapidly after COVID. So if you look at, we all live in a burnout society. We all have burnout lives. If you look at Sri Lankans, even if you interview people, when they speak to us, they are burnout. They are in a hurry. They are fighting for survival. So we have a huge challenge to maintain well-being with such mindset of people. Because people have switched on to the survival mode rather than living mode. Right? So I speak to many people and they talk about, they lament about their life. They talk about, this is my problem, these are my problem. Today, you know, most of the people get married in 5-star hotels, 7-star hotels, gala weddings, and the marriage doesn't last longer than the marriage time. Right? Why is that? Why is that? Relationships are broken. So if your employee is coming from a broken relationship, that is where you need to take care of employees. So one of the practices what we do is that we speak to the employee and ask, what are your problems? Tell us how best we can help you. We'll have to switch from you work for me mode to I work with you, how can I help you? That's the immediate mental shift that we need to do. So there are so many practices. With the time, I'll hand over to...
Yeah, thank you, Mihindu. So I think kind of building on that, I think you also shared, Vasanthi, that there are lots of different things that you all have also started at Jana Shakti. And one of the things that you also shared was about, say, for example, the counseling programs you have and the early reluctance for people to start and how it has improved. So one question I have is, what are the kinds of different practices? And when you're developing these strategies, how do you, like when we do training, everybody wants to know what's the ROI. So do those kinds of questions come up, and how do you actually show that investing in these wellness strategies is good business?
Yeah, Mihirini. So, like I said, we are a financial conglomerate. Our board of directors are all financial, coming with financial backgrounds. So it's a number game. So be it insurance, investment banking, finance, it's all number game. Whatever any department would do, we have to justify it with numbers. So I'll first answer the counseling. So we wanted to reach out to our employees through an external counselor. We signed off with a person, and then we had an online platform. They can book their appointments and go. We found out that hardly anyone really book an appointment and go. I think it's the perception and the culture that we live in. If you go to counseling, it's like you have a mental breakdown or something. The society looks at you in a very different way. So we looked at how we can address that. We had many sessions with the counselor and other different ways. We have this beyond JXG support. There are quite a lot of initiatives that goes in the company where we educated the staff. It's not bad, it's okay for you to come and talk if you have a problem. Don't battle it within yourself and really, struggle with it. We are there to help you. And we had this how to handle grief. We had one-on-one sessions with staff, like focus groups, where staff came and spoke about the loss in the family and how they basically struggled with it. And the company never knew about certain things, but we were demanding performance. So there was a disconnect. Likewise, we let them open up how to handle anxiety, how to handle stress. Quite a lot of sessions went about in the group. Thereafter, we set up this the counselor to come and stay in a very confidential area where no one can see physically, because online really didn't work for us, because staff were really not confident to talk about their issues or concerns, challenges online. So that really worked well for us. But it's, I would say, about a 6-7 months journey, doing a lot of things to handhold the staff to say, okay, it's okay, you can just go and talk to them, talk to her. She will be helping you to sort out certain things. Sometimes when you go and talk, you might not really get a solution, but talking to someone helps immensely to relieve your stress or pain that you are juggling with. So that really helped us with regard to promoting this. It's a company paid effort, and we don't know who goes. We don't talk to anyone, or the counselor talk to us and say, okay, these are the issues, this is the person who came in, we don't know anything about it. We only ask stats to get to know whether it's a workable solution or whether staff are using it. That's all we know. And thereafter, the stats, we have health matrix, we have a life insurance. Jana Shakti Life is part of the group. So through the life insurance also, we analyze what kind of claims that we get in. Keeping the confidentiality intact, we analyze whether it's diabetes, hypertension, stress, weight-related, or any surgical issues. And we update certain companies through Flash Health system for them to plan their wellness programs. So we do that. And in terms of company, all companies are certified GPTW with GPTW, and we do dipstick surveys, we do skip levels, young forums, focus groups, coffee with chairman, coffee with MD, all sorts of programs to get feedback to understand whether our staff are happy. We in fact have this callback interviews where a new employee joins in. After 3 months, we do talk to that person and ask whether you're happy or not. Usually what happens is during the probation, we say, okay, these are your KPIs, we are not happy with you. But this way, employee can come and tell us, sorry, we are not happy with the company. I am not really given the required infrastructure to work, so they can come and give feedback to us. We are a family-owned company. The values we live by are the family values. So the main value, there are 5 values, but the foundation is caring. So we go to care for our employees beyond the normal caller duty. We don't have a policy for it. We don't want to have a policy for it. Even an employee have a death in the family, we don't ask the employee, when are you coming back to work, or apply for leave. They can take their own decision to return to work when they are okay. Likewise, for certain grades and above, it's unlimited leave. We don't track attendance, flexible working hours. It's quite
There's a lot that you're doing.
Flexibility in terms of doing things. So the other thing, the numbers. So we have to present to the boards, different boards. We have many boards, remuneration committees, nomination committees, related party committees, so many boards, because we are fully governed by central bank and stock exchange. We do present data, where we were, and the journey that we have started, and what are the benefits. I know Sri Lanka is suffering with a lot of staff leaving, a lot of people leaving, brain drain and all that. I would say Jana Shakti Group, we have really not felt it so hard. Yes, maybe 1%, 1.5% increase from the normal attrition, but we are really not losing staff, especially the top talent. There must be something working for us of all what we do, and it's mainly caring. Just with all our heart, we care.
Thank you very much, Asanti. That, the fact that you're very person-centric in terms of how you develop, how you respond to well-being in the organization. Thank you for sharing that. So Chanel, as a mental health practitioner, you work with organizations as an external counselor. So what kind of, if you look at the kind of needs that you get, what are the most prevalent, kind of challenges that you come across?
I think I've noticed in recent times a lot of it has to do with self-worth. So that is, am I doing enough? And that leads into a lot of things like general anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, tied in with, obviously, relationship issues.
Yeah.
Almost every other person is struggling with relationships, right? And I don't just mean romantic relationships. That's very significant.
Friendships and-
yes, friendships, colleagues, boss, supervisors, team members. So I think that's why it's just so important to educate yourself on how do we interact with other people in a way, because a lot of it is based on the inability to express oneself properly and also listen, right? And people are very bad at listening. They're very bad at listening to themselves, and they're very bad at listening to other people, right? Because it's all about conversations and, trying to get your point across, or, So I think mainly I would say it's related to the self. So purpose, a lot of people are struggling with identifying purpose. Especially, again, like I said, Gen Z is very confused about their purpose, right? And why they're here. And in relation to that, there's a lot of pressure to be somebody. Because if you think about it, never in the history of humankind have we been able to compare ourselves to everybody.
Yeah, true.
Right? Just basically everyone, right? It's not just your neighbor, it's, the Kardashians. Right?
Yeah.
So, and we are social creatures. We, see, you shouldn't criticize too much of this stuff either, because it's very natural about the way we are behaving. If you think about it, we're tribal by nature. And how we survived as a species is by looking at our rival tribes and other tribe members. That's how you emulate and you inspire. So even jealousy, if you look at the evolutionary reason as to why we're jealous, it actually has a very good reason to exist. Because that way you know what someone else has and you might need it, so I will covet that. So a lot of it has to do with that individuality, balancing it with the social part.
Yeah, so I think even in my own work, this the relationship part occupies a big portion of it. And that has a lot to do with our inability to, like you said, express ourselves, communicate, shame, wanting to be right, not wanting to be wrong, all of these different things. So this also kind of brings me to a question about the role of leadership. So maybe either Mihindu or Shana, what is the role of leadership and line managers in ensuring, so you're talking from an HR and a policy level, but at every line manager leadership level, what's their role in ensuring that teams are engaged and thriving in their well-being?
So I think one is to also educate line managers and leadership that it's okay not to be okay. Because otherwise there's a lot of pressure on them that they are the people who need to kind of, be okay. So just taking an example, and I forgot to cover that in the first part when I said, for example, we have a culture canvas and we have psychological safety, and we have a little, post-it saying it's okay not to be okay. So it's fine to say, you know what, I'm having a bad day today, or I can't come into work, or can you take this call for me? It's in our competencies, and again, we also have caring as our first value in SHIP. So I think firstly, in terms of the line managers and leaders, they need to know that they are also human, and walk the talk, but just be conscious that they also work with humans. And something I see, I've worked in the apparel industry and the IT industry, and something I see more in the IT industry is that managers want to be more technical. It's about, okay, what's your work, why is your project next, but a little bit of that human aspect and the behavioral aspect, noticing, okay, maybe that person, is everything okay, just kind of having that conversation. So I think it's not we have, all the companies have the policies, they have the frameworks, they have the competencies, all of it. I think it's just to kind of go a bit on that extra mile to be human and know you're working with humans, and just ask them, is everything okay? That might be a surprise. Maybe tomorrow you go to work and ask everyone, how is your day, everything, rather than, oh, what happened with that task?
Yeah. So it really goes back to what you said about also caring, so even at the leadership level. So we are a bit tight for time, so I'm just going to ask Mihindu something that about, Chanel also talked about purpose. What is the role of meaningful work? So now I have, when it comes to numbers, if I was in a numbers job, it would have no meaning to me because I'm not good at it and it's not where my strength obviously lies. So what does meaningful work mean, and how does that affect well-being, do you think?
It's a very good question. I asked this, I did a couple of corporate training to executives and I asked this stupid question. They told me this is stupid. I put this slide and asked, what is purpose of your life? And I gave them 5 hours to come back with an answer. I said, don't impress me. Ask yourself, what is the purpose of life? We born to this world, what is the purpose of our life? What are your priorities? Everything starts from that. Everything starts from that. So the purpose, life has 2 meaningful things. One is the purpose of life, other one is the clarity of that purpose. You can have a purpose very cloudy, blurred, but if your purpose is not with clarity, you don't know where you're heading. You will be heading your life like a boat without a sail. Suddenly you come up to 40 years, 50 years, oh my God, my life is over. Right? You have not lived your life. This happens purely because of the purpose. The purpose of work also very important. We are in IT organization, I told my guys, number 1 purpose of work is to work comfortably and conveniently. If you are in IT organization, if you don't have comfort and convenient and you are stressed, then what is this automation is all about?
The whole point is lost.
It doesn't sound logical. If you think that the Mark Zuckerberg or Google, Satya Nadesan is running all over the America to run this one, no. If you look at most of the IT organization, particularly financial sector, they are under stress because they are not sure whether the system will work on Monday and whether it will work on Tuesday. What kind of IT guy are like you? Why do you want to have a bunch of IT guys who doesn't know whether the system will work or not? Following day, they will not know whether they will live or not also. See, the issue is this. The purpose, why my job is, this purpose is, the employee from the security guard onwards, they must have purpose. They must know why they come to work, right? The very simple phenomena I can cite you is, but may not be look at the terrorist groups. How can they make their followers to die on behalf of them? If so, as leaders, why can't we make our own employee, our own team, our own brothers and sisters to come to work happily? Well-being starts from there. Well-being starts from there. I speak to people and ask, how is your family? How is your son? Now my second in command is having a second son, and in the same time he has to go for first son grade 2 admission and all that. I said, go settle your family and then come back. It's important because I also had the same issue. See, the idea is the purpose, then they will know what the life of the purpose. And the life purpose comes from the priority that you want to achieve from your life. Yeah. Just because somebody wants to be a general manager, nobody wants to be a general manager. They want somebody else. Look at you, define your purpose, go back, it's never too late.
Thank you, Mihindu, for that enlightening. So, because we're at the very end and there's so many things that I do want to ask you. I thought maybe just to leave the audiences with something. So maybe I'll ask Vasanthi and Oshana. If there was an organization that was just starting out, looking at what are, more kind of structurally, what are the kind of well-being practices that we should inculcate or should start, and what are the initiatives. So where would you start, Oshana? Like, what would you give them as advice? And Vasanthi, I'd also like you to, if you were advising and consulting them, and they're just starting on their journey, what would you say?
I'll piggyback on what Mihir said. Firstly, why?
Yeah.
Is it for the brand? Is it to kind of, thing, but why? And get your leadership and your key stakeholders on the same page as to why you want to work on wellness. I think that's the first step. The second would be to see where you are currently and just know that wellness is huge. It's holistic. There's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of companies who do it. So just reach out. A lot of people have done it. So the information is there, but just be on the same page as to why, so that you can then later measure it as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Shana. Vasanthi, what would you what would you add to that?
On the same lines, I would say you understand your workforce and the dynamics, whether they really need wellness or something else. Even though it's like a buzzword these days, it might not really be wellness that your staff needs. It must be something else. So just analyze that. You need to really have your ears to the ground and feel the pulse of the staff. And then I would say do a bit of research about what is out there to really suit without really have a cookie cutter method. And then you need to get the buy-in of the leadership and the boards. Data is again important, so validate your findings with data, because then you can really show them the ROI with less absenteeism, more productivity, energized, happy workforce. So do that and set proper targets, because what gets measured gets done. So have some set KPIs. Have someone who's really passionate about it leading, not really HR. There could be someone at a very different level who can really drive this for the company. And then do your periodic communication, tell staff why we are doing it and why it's important, because sometimes we just launch something and wait it to happen, it won't happen. So you have to handhold the whole thing until it reap the fruits. So do that and then adapt and elevate, because you have to keep evolving. Look at what your competitors are also doing, because sometimes you can learn the mistakes and you don't need to do the same mistakes. So learn from that and keep evolving.
Yeah, thank you. So I think when you're starting, sometimes you have to educate even your board. So, and that's where the evidence matters. I think when you're working with people at different levels, you may have the information, but you have to convince people at the top to actually invest time and money. So Chanel and Mihindu, I'll ask, if you were to leave a well-being practice that you adopt that has really made a difference for you, what would you leave? Chanel, I'll first ask you.
I think, first of all, again, it comes down to why,
Yeah.
right? Everything comes down to why. So I do this assessment with clients where I ask them, how do you balance the 5 areas of life? There are only 5 areas. If you really think about human life, there's only 5 areas, okay? You can argue with me after this if you can, but according to research, there are just 5 areas. The first area is well-being. The second area is relationships. The third is purpose, so personal and career. Fourth is hobbies and interests, things that you just like to do for fun. Very important, very underrated.
Yes.
And last but not least is finance, right? So you need to balance these 5, right? You need to first figure out, okay, where's your ranking in each of those areas? Then and I think math is very underrated. I think mathematics is actually very powerful if you know how to use it and integrate it with the personal, right? So you give yourself a score out of 10 and you figure out, okay, well-being, what am I? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Relationships, how am I doing with my relationships? And so on and so forth. Then what you do is do what I call proactive living. That is, you figure out, how do I make my 4 out of 10 a 7 out of 10? Right? What is missing in that area in my life that I could do proactively? There's no point in thinking about it and being positive. You've got to do stuff in life, right? right? And that's why behavioral change is so different. You have to apply. It's always the application piece, right? So I would say do an assessment like that and figure out where the gaps are, and then you can balance all five.
Thank you very much, Shalin. And Mihindu, something that you'd like to leave the audience with, a practice that you think is important?
You know, we are in the modern technology era. We all are like a software. Every stage of the life you need upgrade. Very simple. So what I did was, I realized that I had to live long enough to experience life and enjoy the good things in life. So what I did was, I always have a balance between the activities that I do. I only have 3 priorities: family, profession, and myself. Myself, I spend a little bit more time purely because of when you're age 35, 40, you might be able to swim 300 meters every other day. But when you're 50 and 60, you might not be able to do anything, but you have to keep your organs working. You know, rather than going to the doctor, paying 2,000 rupees channeling charges.
5,000 by the way now.
Yeah. 5,000 rupees. It's better to get a fitness coach for 50,000 rupees and not going to doctors at all. I'm one person who would like to proudly tell, this is not personal boasting, don't misunderstand. When I was diagnosed with diabetes in 2009, I told one of the doctors that I'm going to fight diabetes without you. Today I'm successful. Because my favorite is ice cream and chocolate. I don't like anybody to inhibit. My model was Michael Johnson, who fought with AIDS on sheer willpower. So I did a lot of research on all these areas, and I found out what doctors tell is absolutely not true.
Thank you, Mihindu.
So last word is like, remember, you are a software, you need upgrade before the bugs hit you.
Thank you very much, Mihindu. I think we have a few minutes for questions. So anybody in the audience who have questions for our panelists? And how many minutes do we have? Sorry? 10. Okay, right. Any questions somebody has? Are the mics moving, or just put your hand up? So I actually have a question for Vasanthi and for you all. Is that I've been intrigued because there is enough research to show the link between physical health and mental health. And is there a way, and I think I asked Vasanthi, like, you know, are there ways for organizations, you know, you all have corporate insurance, to collaborate with the insurance companies? I know there's privacy of data, but maybe analysis to really find out what are the main physical illnesses, what are the main claims, so that we, like you all do for your organization, because you can, like, are there opportunities for insurance companies to provide that as a service, to collaborate with their corporate clients, to give that kind of information? And would that be useful?
I would say yes. It's just an effort that you need to make towards your clients. Like I said, Jan Shakti Life, we do that. But you need to sign off. It's a separate service that we sign off with an external party on behalf of our clients, where we give that data anonymously for them to take their decisions with regard to the wellness of the staff they have. So we have an insurance body, governing body, so everyone can bring it there and then take a decision on behalf of the community, larger community, whether all insurance companies can do. I'm sure they also must be having bits and pieces of that being done, but yeah, it's a collective decision.
We don't do it right now, but definitely something that would be good. But I guess with the sign-offs and all of that. And just to kind of just call out one thing on the mental wellness, and I think we also touched upon it on the psychology. So for example, I'm just saying, like, when we introduced it, we hardly had anyone. And it's always been online because of the nature of our business. But later on, actually, we had more people embracing it. But that didn't really mean that the mental wellness level was going to, but more people were open to go. So I think we need to be careful how we interpret the analytics as well. Because now people call and ask, oh, is that person on this? Or who do I contact? So it's been more people asking as well. And again, that also sometimes you can use your in-house, or we've introduced it through insurance as well. It was not on on outdoor, and we said that that's something we need on outdoor if people need to go and see psychologists outside who we have as well.
Thank you, Shana. So, any questions for our panel before we close up?
And Mehrini, one more thing. I think we are all as individuals sometimes don't know what my colleague must be going through. So we party, we go out together, we trip, we work closely, but we might really not know what my counterpart or my friend or my even family member to that matter. I think the suicide rate is really rising high. People need a friend to talk to, I guess. So if we all can play that part individually with the closest to really talk, because we are running a rat race. We run a game and it's a marathon. We don't have the time to pause. I think pausing is like really important, even for self-reflection, for us to understand, create space for us and understand about ourselves is important to understand, am I stressed, am I having depression, am I having anxiety? We don't even have time to do that. So as individual levels, it's just a bit takeaway. If we can do that to ourselves and to at least one person a day in your life, at work or at even family level, I feel it would really help someone.
Thank you, Vasanthi. And one thing I remember you telling me was that asking for help was a big part of your well-being journey. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much for the panelists. It was a very fruitful conversation. I'm Tremilo from Pan Asia. Now, there is this new concept called having a best friend in a workplace. I'm just putting out to the panel to find out whether does it really work, or is it like you get alienated not having a best friend also in a workplace?
Hindu wants to answer, and I think you have also. Everybody wants to answer. So first we'll start with Hindu. Yes, Hindu. No, that's okay. That's all right.
Actually, we ourselves isolated by ourselves, purely because of the introduction of mobile phone. Seriously, because I think I shared with some article I have done, purely because we forget to talk to our own family members in the morning, purely because of what we first take is, before even we go to the toilet, we take is a mobile phone. This has been identified in the worldwide itself by Stanford University, Dr. Ann Lem, because it's called the dopamine addiction. It's called the digital dependency. So it's very important that introducing someone, encourage everybody to speak to someone. Always speak to a friend. It's a very good concept. Actually, the leadership of the organization has to become friend of everyone. Right? The right friend who says what is wrong and what is right, and be helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when I was at HEMAS, we basically call that wellness buddies, right? So the problem is being consistent with your wellness buddy because, life happens. So the thing is, you've got to figure out, okay, first is trust. You have to build trust, because why would you talk about your issues to someone at work? Right? Because we do struggle culturally with this concept of gossip. Okay, it's a real problem. I mean, every company I consult with, one of the major issues is the gossip stuff, right? And that impacts their way of, working and how they come to, how they sort of present themselves at work. And so that really has an impact on your mental state, because you don't feel safe, psychological safety, as you all spoke about, right? So you've got to then really figure out how do you build that relationship. It's a wonderful idea, and it really has some merit. It's just that how do you get it right? Okay, and for that, I think leadership has to model that behavior. If you don't trust your leaders, right, why the hell would we trust you, right? So it has to come from the top level. We need to create a culture where this gossip stuff is not tolerated, okay? Because it's really unnecessary. People use that as a weapon. It's all about power dynamics. Everything about life is about power nowadays. So one way of getting power is to destroy someone's reputation, right? And so it's a very powerful thing. And we need to be very careful that we don't tolerate it. As leaders, as people in charge, you've got to have a no tolerance policy for bullying, for putting people down, for attacking them. And of course, there are certain things like humor. I understand the importance of humor, right? Generally, men are very good at this humor thing. I think women, sometimes we struggle because it can be very personal, very fast. Sorry?
Depends on the humor.
It depends on yeah, absolutely. Depends on the humor. Because, you know, if you body shame someone, it does impact somebody's psyche and the way they look at themselves. But at the same time, then you have to build tolerance, right? You have to be like, come on, take it, right? Take a joke, right? So, but for that to happen, we need to build that trust. I need to trust that you're not saying that to offend me, right? So a wellness buddy concept is great if we have enabled trust within the organization from top down.
Thank you, Chanel. I think you have something that you can add, Vasanthi.
He asked about the buddy system, best friend. Yes, we do have, but only for 1 month, because then we want the employee to gel with the rest of the community, just to help the person to induct to the entire system. We give 1 month. First day they start with lunch and things like that. So that's what the buddy system is all about for us. But I guess, like others said, it's the CEOs basically knows the first name of most of the employees, not only the employees, even the spouse and the children. So that much close we are. And let's say you get a text or an email after 6, there are CEOs who say, go home, family waits you, this can wait till tomorrow, 8 o'clock. So that's the type of the culture we promote. We can improve, but we are on a journey towards really caring for our employees. So buddy system, that's how it is.
Thank you, Vasanthi. Anyone else with, I hope that gives some insight from our panelists. Anyone else with any other question? Okay, I think lunch calls maybe. I have no idea what time lunch is, but thank you very much, Vasanthi, Chanel, Oshana, and Mihindu. It was a real pleasure talking to you. There were so many other things I wanted to ask because we had such lovely conversations on our one-on-ones. But time is an issue. But thank you very much for this time that you've given us and for sharing your experiences, practices, and strategies. And thank you very much to the audience. For giving us this space and time to share some of our thoughts on wellness and balance and having a culture of the wellness in the organization. Thank you.